All right, it's time to talk with our featured guest, Priscilla White. Priscilla, how's it going?
Hey, Michael, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking. Priscilla, if you can you kick things off by telling us a bit about your dental practice? Who are you serving and what are some of the unique things you're doing for your patients right now?
Absolutely. So we are based in Chicago. Our business is called Comfort Dental Studio. We have two locations in the city of Chicago. One of them is our flagship company is in the Hyde Park neighborhood. If you're familiar with Chicago, it's a pretty well-known old neighborhood in Chicago. And then we just opened up our second location in a very up-and-coming neighborhood called the Pilsen neighborhood. We have a pretty eclectic mix of patients, especially in Hyde Park. We're very close to the University of Chicago, so we do see a lot of patients that come from university, staff, students, postgrad, undergrad, all manners of people come here. We also serve the local community, which is it's a melting pot of different people from all over the world, actually. And again, Pilsen has a similar kind of makeup, minus the university, of course. The people that live there are more the younger age group, I want to say, younger professionals. They're all moving into the neighborhood there. So we do see a pretty young mix in that location. Our main philosophy, Dr. White, who is the founder, owner, dentist of the practice, believes in providing the best dental care that is possible. He calls us dental servants. And the philosophy is exceptional care by exceptionally caring professionals. So he truly believes in that. And he not just, says things, he really walks the talk. When he says something, he believes in it and he aims to serve every patient that walks through the door. That's pretty much what we do as a practice. Every patient that walks through the door is fully served regardless of race, age, belief system, whatever. They're here for a particular reason, and we make sure that we go above and beyond to fulfill that.
Okay, nice. And you mentioned you just opened a second location. How long ago was that?
Well, we're coming up to a year now. It would be a year in August. So yeah, we're slowly creeping up there.
Oh, okay. Why? What was the decision behind opening up a second location?
Yeah. So our flagship office has 4 operatories. And we quickly ran out of space. We have a pretty good growth rate for this location, and we ran out of space. So we were trying to find a location that's close enough, but yet not too close, to kind of take the overflow of the patients from this location, because we didn't want to have patients waiting for months to get in to see a doctor, because that's how booked out we were. We wanted to be able to serve our patients in a more reasonable time period. And therefore, we made the decision to open the location. It's not very far from here. I want to say it's within the 5-mile radius, close enough for patients from our current location to go over there if need be, and far enough to still attract newer patients.
Okay, nice. Can I ask you, how do you know you ran out of space or you're not efficiently using your current space to the maximum?
That is a great question. So we did a little bit of analysis, may not be the most scientific analysis, but here's how we went about it. We took a look at all of the production. So we have on our scheduling, we kind of break out our schedule per doctor based on production, which is basically your fillings, your extractions, crowns, implants, that kind of work is what we call production. Then we have a hygiene column, basically where you do your deep cleanings, your perio maintenances, so on and so forth, right? That goes under your hygiene column. And then you have a new patient column, and then we also have a recall column. So we try to make sure, 4 columns to cover the 4 operatories, right? And the doctors kind of go between back and forth. Mm-hmm. At that point, we had 2 doctors. And it got to a point where we had all of these columns full for the 8 hours that we were open. And then we had more patients who wanted to get in, and we didn't have space for them to get in, right? Even if we were trying to have them come in and do the 30-minute mark, it still wasn't working out. And Dr. White truly believes that every patient should be given their full attention. Just because we are busy, we don't overbook, and want to make sure that every patient gets their full hour. Even if it's a simple recall appointment, he wants to make sure that they get their full hour. He's able to spend time with them, talk to them about oral hygiene habits, so on and so forth. And therefore, we figured, if we're going to make patients wait for 2 months to get in for a simple filling, it clearly means that this is not enough space for us. Like I said, it's not the most scientific thing, but it's also a mixture of how we'd like to serve our patients and what we have to offer, right? And that's when we kind of started looking for a place which would make more sense for our current patients to go there, because a lot of our patients that come to our main location a lot of them actually walk to the office. It's located very centrally, and we are literally 6 blocks from the University of Chicago. So a lot of the students that live in the dorms, they walk over here. How do we make it convenient for people who can't drive, public transportation? All of those things were taken into account before we found a spot, loved it, and got it.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting that you guys you do it that way, Priscilla, because I feel like at that point, what somebody might say is like, well, you're going to have to cut those new patient appointments and those recares or whatever, like in half to double up so we can be more efficient in the practice. So I guess why did you not lean to more towards that way? I know you said we don't want to, but what is the, I guess, philosophy behind that or the meaning behind that? How does the new patient appointment kind of look?
So when a new patient comes in, of course, the initial where the x-rays are taken, the dental assistants go in, they do the prophy, and then they set the stage up basically for the doctor to come in. So if you were to cut the appointment down to say 30 minutes, the x-rays, prophy, all of that, let's say takes 20 minutes, right? That basically gives the doctor just 10 minutes to do a comprehensive evaluation and talk to the patient about a treatment plan if they need any. Which we as a company don't believe 10 minutes is enough. You're rushing the patient through the appointment, and that is a really bad first impression of the company, right? I mean, they're walking in and they're being rushed through the whole process, and the doctor comes in, barely does an exam, has barely any time to answer the questions and sit down and get to know them. It's a relationship, right? The doctor needs to get to know the patient. The patient has to feel comfortable coming to the office because there's a lot of people who are scared of dentists. So you want to establish that rapport, you want to establish that relationship, you want to make them feel comfortable. It's that philosophy that fed into, we are not going to cut corners just because we ran out of space and make our patients pay for that. That's not fair to the patients, And therefore we said we need a little bit more room. Obviously, Hyde Park is a very crowded neighborhood. It's hard to find a space where we could get like 5 or 6 operatories. That just wasn't feasible. I don't believe there's a space like that. At least if there is, it will come at an extremely high premium. And therefore we said, hey, let's branch out and find something else. And that will also help the business grow in more ways than one.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. I like that a lot. Now, you also mentioned there's a university, right? It's very university heavy, or like there's one there where you're located.
Right.
So how do you market to patients from universities?
This is going to sound so strange. We do not market. We have not marketed yet. It's all been word of mouth. We really have a very, very minimal social media presence, which is, I know we really need to get going on that because in this day and age, we're in 2024, we need to have a social media presence. It's very minimal. I think mainly it's all word of mouth because we make sure that every patient that walks in gets a really good impression of the place. They feel comfortable when they leave. And if there are any concerns, Dr. White himself will personally address them. He just doesn't palm it off to the front desk or to me or anybody. If a patient expresses a problem, a concern, he will personally reach out to them. Or if we bring it to his attention saying, hey, this patient said this, this, and this when they were checking out, this was a problem they had, he will reach out to them, either call them, email them, whatever. He reaches out to them. So we go out of our way to make a patient feel comfortable. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm sure most dental offices do that. I mean, most dentists didn't get into the profession to make money. They got in because they want to serve people. So I believe this possibly is a philosophy across the board, but Dr. White does take extra time out of his day to make sure patients are comfortable. And I think that kind of gets around. That's point number 1. And I think point number 2, our office is very conveniently located. It's in the heart of 53rd Street in Hyde Park is like what they refer to as a downtown Hyde Park. You have all these restaurants and, there's a Michelin-rated restaurant like a block down the street from us. So it's kind of like where a lot of people just come because it's a fun little place to hang out. A Sophie Hotel across the street. It's just a very nice bustling neighborhood. So we got lucky in that sense. We were able to find a location that's kind of in the heart of Hyde Park. So a lot of people are able to walk. We are surrounded by condos and apartments. So, people that live there just walk over here. So I think it's also convenience. And our office looks very prominent because it's a storefront and we have a huge sign that says Comfort Dental Studio. So people just walking by sometimes see the sign and they're like, and they walk in and they're like, the dentist's office. Then we need to go to the dentist. Can we find an appointment? So, so it's all of that. It's a combination. And I think we really got lucky in that sense. It's a combination of a lot of things.
Gotcha. Okay. And then how many new patients a month are you currently bringing in?
Roughly roughly anywhere from 70 to 80.
Wow. Okay. And do
Yeah.
you know how many of those are walk-ins by any chance?
I want to say 10% of that would easily be walk-ins, which is, I think, a pretty good number, right?
Mhm.
And then a lot of them come through our website. Also, we are listed on as providers we accept PPOs. So we are listed on the insurance company, provider network. So a lot of people come through that as well. And we have a pretty good marketing team who've optimized our SEO, our search engine optimization is pretty good. So people come through that as well. So it's kind of like a combination.
Okay. So that's the marketing you guys are doing right now is website and well, besides insurance, right? PPOs, is
SEO.
website and SEO.
Yeah, our SEO is pretty good. I would say our marketing team does a really good job of that.
Okay. Could I ask who's the marketing team?
So you just caught me in between two marketing teams, actually. We just consolidated all of our marketing to this company called DocSites. They come highly recommended by eAssist, actually. So that's where we switched over. So, yeah.
Okay. Docs. Great company. They're a really, really
Yeah.
good company. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So then if we transition to the PPO and the marketing, right? Now, I know this is something you specialize in, specifically when it comes to getting reimbursed at the highest rate. So number one question I wanted to ask you regarding negotiation strategies, what are the most effective strategies you found for negotiating higher reimbursement rates with PPO contracts? And can you share any examples with these strategies significantly that improved your practice's revenue?
Great question. And I wish I could take credit for that. But the only credit I can take is that I found the right partner to do that for us. So we work with this company called Unitas. It's part of Henry Schein. It's a Henry Schein company. They're called Unitas. I forget the full name, but I found them, they're asking because we use a lot of Henry Schein products. So I asked around to see if there's someone that can help us out with the credentialing aspect of it. And we were directed to Unitas. And Unitas has been a great partner. So they pretty much do most of the heavy lifting for you. They do a complete analysis of your current free schedule. And then they do an analysis of the market that you are, so zip code, basically, zip code analysis. And if you need to increase your price, they let you know on which procedures you need to do it. And after you increase your price, they take your price list and they reach out to basically the network leasing companies through which, a lot of these larger insurance companies pay out through. And based on the fee schedule, they're able to negotiate a PPO contract with these major network leasing companies. And then once they have the rates in place, they bring it over to you, obviously, and they give you a choice. They say, hey, with this network leasing company, ABC, we were able to negotiate this kind of pricing for these insurance companies. And overall, this looks like an increase of, say, 24% over what you currently have. And if you go with this network leasing company, overall increased percentage is what you're looking at, let's say 34%. And then they also break it down further to a more granular level where they say, hey, these particular insurance companies may not be credentialed under this particular network leasing, but we can go under here. And if both don't work, say direct credentialing. So they give you all of these options. And of course, you make an informed decision at that point as an office, right? And you let them know, hey, this is the contract I want to choose. And these particular insurance companies, I believe direct credentialing might work better. So it's a little bit of, not a little, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of analysis. You try to figure out what's the best combination for your office, basically, right? And then once you give them the green light, then they go ahead, they put everything into place for you. Then they also get all of the doctors in your office credentialed to fit into that PPO network. It's a slightly pricey proposition upfront, but if you just look at that, then you're being very short-sighted, right? Because in the long run, you recoup not just what you paid them, you recoup more than that. They also kind of put into perspective some of the procedure codes that you may not have billed insurance companies in the past, right? You're leaving money on the table. But now you see, hey, looks like the network leasing company pays for this code. Why haven't I ever billed out the insurance companies in the past? So now you're able to build that out. So it just kind of brings to light a lot of things that you may have missed in the past, but now, you can actually move forward with that. And then plus you're getting reimbursed at a higher rate. Plus it takes all of that heavy lifting off of you, because if I didn't have Unitas as a partner, it's going to fall either on me or on my front desk to do all of this credentialing work, right? And PPO contracts, forget it. It's completely out of question. I don't know how other offices may have the manpower, but I know my office doesn't have that kind of manpower. Our front office is just really, really busy to do that kind of work, right? And I'm busy trying to manage the practice and run the practice. I really don't have time to be working on PPO contracts. So Unitas is a great partner, and we've been working with them since October of last year, and we're seeing benefits. I mean, when we see some of these new patient checks come through, payments come through, and I've been comparing it to what it looked like a few months ago, it's definitely higher. You do see that 30%, 34, 40%, the increase that they talked about, you actually see it in the amount that's come through.
Nice. Okay, Priscilla. So what were some of the things that you may have missed when you're looking at it? Or maybe some things that are common that you notice, hey, if you get this negotiated, you're missing this type of code, or you're missing this type of procedure.
I can tell you something really, really basic, right? Very basic. So when a new patient comes in, you're basically doing what? Panoramic images, bite wings, comprehensive evaluation, and pro fee, right? So 4 line items that go out. I found out that one of the network leasing companies actually pays for oral hygiene instructions. It's not much, but it's like $53 that they pay. And if you're looking at 80 patients a month times 53, that's a decent amount of money, right? I mean, which you didn't get in the past, right? You were just leaving that on the table. I thought that was great. I mean, and we do give out oral hygiene instructions. We give them a little oral hygiene kit to take, a toothbrush, toothpaste, a little floss. We make a cute little bag and we give it to them. That $53 could cover that cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So things like that. Top of my head, I can't think of anything else, but I know I've had this light bulb moment where like, oh, we can build this now, can't we? Things like that. So it really does put a lot of things into perspective.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Now, when evaluating PPO contracts, what key terms and conditions are you looking for, or should practice owners pay close attention to in order to maximize that reimbursement rate?
So my opinion basically would be that when you're creating that first initial fee schedule, pay attention to that, because when Unitas does their analysis, they're looking at, say, the top 25 codes that you normally bill out is what you're doing the analysis for. But when the rate sheet goes for the contract negotiation, they're looking at the entire contract, the entire price schedule. So look at the other procedures that you don't do as often and see, are you billing them enough, right? Is there enough margin in there for you? You don't have to be the most expensive person in the zip code. We are not. We try to remain like within the 70th to 80th percentile. So we are not too cheap. We are not too expensive. So kind of stay in that middle zone. So try and see what your pricing looks like for other procedure codes and try and stay in the middle, because when they negotiate it, you need to remember that the PPO contracts will be based off your list price. We also got, just with a side note. So the network leasing company that we chose to go with, because that covered most of the PPOs that we accept, they also offer an in-house membership plan. And we've signed up for that to offer it to our patients that don't have insurance. And we are able to negotiate a good price, a good experience for the non-insured patients because of our relationship with the parent company. It's like an umbrella of things that you buy into, and any office that's looking into it needs to find a perfect mix for them. There are some offices that they do PPOs, HMOs, Medicare, so on and so forth. So what's the best mix for you, right? Like what works for you? What neighborhood are you in? What does your demographic profile look like? Do you see a lot of PPO patients, or do you see a lot of HMO patients? If it's HMO, I don't even know if the PPO contract will work. Like they don't do the HMO part over there, right? So you kind of do a direct credentialing with them. It's kind of like a toss-up. Who's your demographic profile? What type of insurance do you accept? And well, if you're a cash-only office, then, hats off to you. I wish we could operate that way, but we can't. I know some offices do, and they do a great job of it. So it basically depends upon what your office does and who do you serve.
Gotcha. Okay. Why did you guys decide to stay in that percentile, the 70, 80, the middle part? Why didn't you decide to either be the most, touching the most, competitive, why?
Okay, that's actually a really great question. And it's very tempting, right, to charge the most and the highest and get reimbursed at the highest. But we also need to keep in mind that if we have a lot of uninsured patients that come in who use the in-house membership plan, and if we were to have a list price that high, the in-house membership plan people are the ones who'd suffer the most because they get 20% or 30% off of the list price. So they're going to land up paying so much more, which didn't seem fair. It's the uninsured people that really need more help, right? Charging them an arm and a leg for a simple extraction just didn't seem right. So we were trying to find that balance between having a good price list to negotiate with insurance companies and at the same time have a price list that's more affordable for people who are uninsured.
Gotcha. Okay. And so Unitas is the ones who they're officially the ones who build the relationship with the insurance providers, negotiating the PPO contracts and everything like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And then
Yeah.
you guys just review the contracts and then give them the okay whenever you're. How often is this being done?
So once the PPO contracts are in place, they're good for 2 years at least, unless, the network leasing company decides to drop an insurance company, then we need to either directly credential with that insurance company or find which network leasing company they went to, that kind of thing. So it's kind of like you have to handle it case by case. But for most part, once you are in a PPO contract, you're good for 2 years. And we'll see as it goes, because we have a 1-year contract with Unitas. That was what was advised. And then after the year is up, we could have them on a retainer basis so they can keep an eye out for all of these things and, help us clean up as we go along.
Okay, interesting. Priscilla, I know you are the CFO in this organization, in these practices. And so some of that, a lot of that, actually all of it, what you're in charge of is a lot of it is setting up efficient processes and systems. So when it comes to streamlining operations, what are the critical processes that every practice should streamline to improve efficiency? And how can practice owners identify and eliminate like bottlenecks in their current operations?
That is a great question. And just to give a little background about myself, Michael, I actually started working with the practice April of last year. So I'm relatively new to the industry. I'm a banker by profession. So I was in corporate banking for a long time, almost 18, 20 years. Dr. White owns the practice. He's my husband. So last year, we were talking about his practice, and he showed me his aging AR. And it was ridiculously high, like ridiculously high. And I had mentioned this to eAssist at some point. We could have bought a house with the outstanding AR that he had, a nice house in Chicago. So I said, this isn't working. You are one person, you're trying to manage the practice, you're trying to be a dentist, you're trying to do everything. We need to do something about this. So he said, how do you feel about quitting your job and coming and working with me? I'm like, oh, that's a huge leap. I'm in banking. I'm a banker. I love doing what I do, and I get compensated pretty nicely for what I do. So do I really want to give up all of that and come work for you? He's like, well, it won't be working for me. It'll be working with me. Do you want to come? It took a lot of persuasion, and I finally came over last year in April. So that kind of kicks my journey in managing the practice. And that's kind of where I started trying to put processes in place, because there's chaos, right? And you can get through with chaos and kind of make ends meet and move along. But if you really want to succeed and grow and take your practice to the next level, you definitely need to have some organized processes in place, right? So my first order of things was, how am I pulling all the reports to look at the numbers? Because numbers, what makes sense to me. Like, I need to understand, what are the different procedures we're doing? How are we getting compensated? Where is this aging receivables coming from? And the management system we had back then wasn't spitting out the kind of reports I was comfortable with, or I shouldn't be comfortable with, which made sense to me. There was a lot of overlap in the information, and it did not speak to me. Like, the picture that was presented didn't make sense with the actual situation. So I started shopping around for a system that would make sense to me, right? That would spit out reports that would explain what's going on. And after a lot of shopping around, talking to a lot of sales reps, I settled on Dentrix Ascend. It's a Henry Schein product. It's a cloud-based product, which is great. So I can work from home sometimes if I want to. And I can tell you without doubt that Dentrix Ascend has the best reporting in place. The power reporting is exactly what I'm looking for. I can convert everything to an Excel spreadsheet and, do my own charts and run my numbers and kind of, create what I want, right? Because that's what power reporting does. It helps you pick out the parameters, it helps you pick out the fields, the measurements, what you're looking for to compare. And that is what really gives out the true picture of what's going on in the practice. So that was one of the things that I created to understand where the bottlenecks are coming from. And from there, I found out certain procedures were being rejected by insurance companies, right? And so when it gets rejected by insurance companies, it becomes a patient's responsibility. And therefore, we're looking at this high AR. And why they're being rejected. And then you understand why they're being rejected, because I spoke to a lot of insurance companies, picked up the phone And I said, who's approving or disapproving or who is rejecting these procedures? So I was able to talk to a couple of doctors working for insurance companies, and they explained to me why they're rejecting this and what they're looking for. And there is my first process. So for these procedures, you need to do this, 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 and this. If we don't send this for this particular procedure, it is going to get rejected. If we don't have this kind of backup for this particular procedure, it's going to get rejected. If it's not diagnosed properly and we send it out, it's going to get rejected. As a result of which, we had to get rid of a hygienist because the diagnosis was bad and 80% of the SRPs that were done in 2023 were rejected. And we had to write off a lot of money, but that's, water under the bridge. I'm glad we are where we are today because we were able to, understand why this bottleneck was. And then I sat at the front desk. I actually worked the front desk for 3 months straight to understand how we greeting our patients. When they come in, what are we saying to them? Are we collecting copays? Why aren't we collecting copayments? Is it because insurance information is not entered properly into the system? Is that why it's not showing us how much needs to be collected? Is anybody auditing the ledger to see if there are any past amounts that are due from the patient? And when they're in front of us, why aren't we asking them? So I had to put those processes in place. And then I had patients saying that, we call and leave voicemail, nobody calls back. So I had to put a process in place for that. Any voicemail left in the front office, half hour before closing has to be answered the same day. It cannot be carried over to the next day. At least call the patient and let them know, hey, we got your message. We'll get back to you tomorrow. Things like that. So I had to put a lot of little processes that one would think is common sense, but people get caught up in their day-to-day work, right? So I had to outline all of that. And that was project number one. And then we got Ascend in place, and I was able to, kind of look at it in a more holistic manner on a daily basis. And then we were looking for a company that can do insurance billing and patient billing for us. And therefore, eAssist came into the picture. And that took a whole load off the front desk in terms of managing the claims, appealing if things get rejected, making sure that all the attachments go out properly. So we got eAssist in place. And then my next step was, how do we make sure that our reimbursements are higher? How do we make the business more profitable by doing exactly what we're doing? And Unitas came into play. So we got all of that in place. And then this should have been one of my newer projects, but I was so caught up in getting all of this done that I didn't look at our purchases every month. Our purchase supplies for an office like this, it shouldn't be this high. What are we doing here? So I actually looked at our supply list that was ordered out every month, and a doctor who's no longer with the practice was ordering endo stuff. Why are we ordering endo stuff when we refer endo out to? Because this doctor loves to do endo. He spends 3 hours doing an endo. That's not profitable because we don't get reimbursed like the specialists do. We get reimbursed as a general dentist does. He should not be doing endo for 3 hours on one patient. That makes no sense. I had to look at everything from a financial perspective and look at the supplies. Kind of one of our dental assistants took over the supply ordering, and I was able to actually talk to a couple of suppliers, negotiate pricing, and get a special vendor pricing, so to speak. Things like that. I talk to labs and say, hey, we send you so much business. Is there anything you can do? So you're looking at both putting processes in place and at the same time trying to be as profitable as possible doing what you're doing.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot of work that we did the past year, but I think we're in a good place now.
So this all took a year?
Yeah.
Okay. Many questions, but one of the questions I wanted to ask was, you said you let go of your hygienist.
Yeah, bad notes, wrong diagnosis. It was almost like anybody who walked in for a recall, you get an SRP. And and this was something that I did not want my office to stand for. Our mission and his mission did not align, and we didn't want to be associated with somebody like that. And again, if the reporting hadn't spoken to us, we would never have known. The AR aging would have sat there and nobody would have understood why is the AR aging so high. And we just keep writing it off without understanding the root cause of what's causing that. And ultimately tying it back to what's causing that or who's causing that, right? And all of that comes from having a process in place. And from speaking to many people in the industry, I do understand deep cleanings are the most highly rejected procedures in the industry. And therefore, we create a process to make sure that we get reimbursed. And if we're not going to get reimbursed, then we find a different alternative for the patient, right? So we do pre-authorization for all deep cleanings before we do it on a patient. So we send out the pre-authorization. If it comes back approved, great. If they don't approve it, then we sit down and have a conversation with the patient and say, hey, the pre-authorization didn't approve it because in a lot of cases, insurance companies pay for the plan. They don't pay what the patient needs, right? So we tell them, this is what your plan will pay. And in this case, does not pay. But as a healthcare provider, Dr. White or Dr. Smith or Dr. whoever believes that you need this. Now, we can work to, and we don't want the money to be the determining factor on care. So we can help you in multiple ways. So we lay out all the options for it. We offer payment plan, in-house payment plan, as in I just create a payment plan on the system on Ascend, and that's 0% interest. And, we'll just charge them. If it's $300, we'll charge you $100 every month interest rate, because we want you to have the deep cleaning so you had better oral hygiene and better oral health. If you don't want to do that, or if you think your credit's good enough, we work with a third-party financing company, and they offer interest-free financing for 6 months if you want to do that. Or, we'll offer you the contracted price of, even though the insurance company didn't pay, this is our contracted price with the insurance company. You can pay that in one payment or 2 payments or whatever, right? We try to work with the patients because we believe patient care is more important than saying, oh, your plan doesn't, cover this, so too bad. Either Dr. White or any one of us, the assistants or myself, we call the patient personally and we tell them, this is what we have, this is what came back, this is what we can do for you. So yeah, that's the other procedure that we put in place. It's a lot of working very closely with the patients who we treat, each patient as an individual rather than just a group of patients. Every patient is an individual that walks through the door with individual problems, individual situations, individual needs, and that's how we treat them.
Okay. Now it's interesting because you've been in it for a little over a year, right? You mentioned.
Yeah.
How did you know supplies shouldn't be this high, especially when you were looking at the other associate?
Yeah. So I looked at the dollar amount and I actually asked Dr. White, I said, did you know that you're paying this much for supplies? He was like, no. How do you not know how much you're paying? What's going on here? So I said, is it normal for it to be this high? He said, well, not really. Can you go over the line items with me? So I pulled up the past 6 months and I went over it and I asked him, what's this? What's this? What's this? Because I don't know any of that. I don't know what any of that means. They said, this shouldn't be here and this shouldn't be here. So then I sat down with the assistant who ordered all this stuff. And I said, why are you ordering this stuff? Dr. White doesn't think we need it here. And she said, well, Dr. XYZ said that he needs it. Why? Because he does endo. Oh, and then I went back to Dr. White. I said, oh, this is for endo. He said, why are we doing endo? And so I pulled up the appointment and I said, oh, it's 3-hour endo treatment. He's like, we should not be doing 3-hour endo treatment. That is a waste of money, waste of time rather, because the doctor is getting paid for those 3 hours, but we're not making that kind of money. So I looked at the income on that procedure and then I broke down hourly what the doctor was making. It didn't make sense. So again, I'll break it down by numbers. I'm a very numbers-oriented person.
Which is good. It's good. Now, doing this, I'm sure, Priscilla, the team, how did it look for the team in the sense of like, oh gosh, she already let go of a hygienist and now she's looking into the associate, or you know what I mean? And then does it put everybody on edge or does it ease them, or?
Great question, Michael. Great question. So when I first started last year, there was an assistant that worked in the office for 5+ years, right? And she was extremely unhappy from the day one that I started because I was uncovering all of this. Every day I was uncovering and uncovering. And she was covering for the hygienist. So there were times when the hygienist didn't do anything, sitting around, but he was getting paid. And hygienists get paid a nice, pretty amount per hour, right? And she kept telling Dr. White that, oh, his schedule is full. His schedule is full. And again, I went back and I pulled up every appointment there was for the hygienist, and we saw so many blanks. And I asked, so how is this full and how is this full? Like on one day, he seen only one patient, but he got paid for 8 hours. What's going on here? And the patient that he saw got rejected. So basically, we paid him for doing nothing. And we're taking write-offs because the patient's not going to pay for this. And the insurance company said, sorry, we're not going to pay for this. So that assistant got very antagonistic at every turn and every move. I couldn't put anything in place. So I couldn't put any of all of these procedures and systems that I just talked to you about. For as long as she was there, it was a roadblock everywhere I turned. And I found that ridiculous. It was almost like hazing. anything I did or said was always misconstrued. It was always something that I was just being arrogant or throwing my weight around, or just because I'm Dr. White's wife, I'm just walking in and I'm just kind of trying to take over the world, basically. How dare she? We've been working
Mm,
so hard for all these years. Who does she think she is? That kind of a thing. And finally, it got to a point where Dr. White was like, she refused to talk to me. It was just one of those really uncomfortable situations. And I didn't quite know how to handle it because I didn't expect that. Because coming into a business that's owned by my husband, I would believe that it'd be a little bit more easier for me to put all these systems in place. But anyway, he had
mhm,
to let her go because she refused to communicate with me. So we had a couple of people that, the hygienist, the assistant. So we had to clean up, and we had a very honest conversation with the rest of the team. I told them, hey, I'm here for a very specific reason, to make this company profitable, right? And I'm not going to do it at the expense of employees, because I like each and every one of you. I think you guys are very good at what you do, but there is a mission for this company, right? If the company is profitable, everybody's profitable, because which means you guys get bonuses. You guys will get a increase in your salary. All of those things can happen only if you're profitable. And in order to be profitable, we need to follow procedures. We need to have processes in place. We need to do things systematically. And I'm not asking you to do any of that. I will put everything in place. I just want you guys to buy into my principle. And again, I'm open to questions. I'm open to concerns. I'm open to any suggestions, definitely suggestions. I'm open to all of that. What I don't want is people putting up a barrier just because, for no reason. I will not tolerate that. So let's all get on the same page, roll up our sleeves, and work towards a common goal. And, the rest of the team, they've been here, and it took them a while to warm up to me, because I'm sure they were all concerned,
mhm.
because the way things were going. But right now, knock on wood, we have all of our dental assistants. They love working here. We make sure that we're a family. We celebrate everybody's birthday. We celebrate anniversaries. We do holiday parties. We do, just group outings. We try to make this as cohesive as possible so that everybody feels at home. And it's all a matter of how you communicate and what you do. It's hard running a business. I didn't think so. I thought banking was hard because I work, 10, 12 hours a day. But running a business is like having a newborn child. It needs constant attention.
Yeah,
So,
no,
but
100%. And so,
yeah.
how do you ensure, Priscilla, that your staff is fully engaged and trained to follow the efficient processes and systems you've already put into place? And like, what methods do you use to maintain high levels of motivation and accountability?
I believe that you tell people one time to do something, they might do it that time and then they forget. It's constant reiteration of what is required, what standards we're looking for. And once we get to a certain standard, then people see that as a norm, then the standard becomes a norm. And therefore, they start working towards that. It's just a matter of establishing those standards. And in order to establish those standards, it's constant reiteration of the same thing over and over again. And I try not to micromanage, because nobody likes to be micromanaged, right? But what I like to do is that I will sometimes randomly go back and check to make sure that they did what they did. So, for example, I know we have a third party that does all of our patient billing, all of that stuff. But there are times when the patient's in in front of you, and all you have to do is ask them and say, hey, you have a $200 outstanding amount from, 3 months ago. Can you pay it now? But our front desk doesn't know that unless somebody puts it in the notes section. The previous day, I say for tomorrow, we have, 10 patients. I will go in and audit all of those patients' ledgers, and I'll put notes in the account section and say, hey, this patient was $50, this patient, let's just collect this over their copayment. And then once the patient comes or is in the chair, I'll go back and check their ledger to see if the money was collected, right? And if it's not been collected, then I'll go up to the front desk and say, would you see my notes? Did you talk to the patient? What happened? Little examples. And I know this sounds like micromanaging, but this is trying to get them used to the idea of making sure that every patient account is at zero balance and there's no outstanding money. Because the longer it goes without being collected, the harder it gets to collect that money. And it
Mhm.
also causes a lot of error, right? Nobody likes to be told, hey, you owe me $30 from 3 years ago. That would upset me to no end. I'd rather find out on my next visit
Yeah.
rather than wait that long. So yeah, things like that.
Interesting. Okay. So when do you have to, you find yourself doing that quite often, Priscilla? Like, hey, did you see my notes? Did you see my notes? How do you see they're like, yes, I saw it, or, oh, no, I missed it. But in your mind, they're like, did you really miss it? Or are you just hesitant to ask?
I have those moments all the time. They're like, oh, I saw the note. And
Yeah.
And I just wait, and then, they'll tell me, oh, I asked and they didn't have the money. I'm like, I want you to call this patient. So you put them on the spot, right? I need you to call this patient now. They've left the office. So call them and tell them you forgot to ask them and tell them you need the money. So they do that the one time. The next time they won't do it because they don't want to call a patient after they leave because patients are going to be happy with them. You just put them on the spot once, and it's really not a norm, right? I mean, for most part, they read notes. I'd like to believe that the team has been trained enough and talked to enough to know that they need to read the notes, especially when I put my initials there. I have a really, really good team. I mean, our front desk is really good. Our assistants, I think, are the best in the industry. I like to believe that. They're really, really good at what they do. But they do miss notes every now and then, and they'll have some random excuse. But I think if they can read my notes 95% of the time, I'm okay with that.
Okay, that's really good. I like that a lot. Now, one of the last questions I wanted to ask you, Priscilla, you mentioned how you switched from an older software to a newer software, practice management software. And I like the fact that you didn't try to understand the old one and make sure you fit your understanding to that. You just said, I don't understand it. I need to move to something that is better, right? That is easier for me to understand. So what criteria should practice owners consider when selecting a software management system, and how can they assess whether a particular system will meet their specific needs?
It's like anything else, right? Like an iPhone versus an Android. Some people are diehard iPhone users. I will not use an Android no matter what. And there are some people who will not buy an iPhone because it just doesn't work for them. Practice management software is very, very similar. It's got to work for you. You got to feel comfortable using it. There's so many practice management systems out there. There are some that are server-based, and then there's cloud-based. Me personally, I prefer cloud-based programs because it's so much more easier to access it no matter where I am, right? I can work from home. I can come into the office. Server-based is kind of restrictive to the office. And you may be able to create a couple of access points from outside, like you kind of build an image onto the server and you're able to access it through that, but it's very limited. I would rather have a cloud-based. So say my son's going off to school in Vegas. Say I'm going to go visit him in Vegas, right? I would like to work from, not that I'd like to work from there, but I mean, I want to have the opportunity to work from there.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that. I like to travel. And when I'm traveling, I'd still like to be in touch and see what's going on. So for me, a cloud-based server works best for our practice. And I'm a very, very numbers-based person. For me, numbers speak to me. So I want to have a system where I have robust reporting, or I have the capability to create reports of my own without having to seek assistance from elsewhere. I want a very user-friendly kind of a program for me, right? So Ascend works for me, works for our practice. And from what I've gathered, the doctors love it because it's easier to write clinical notes on that. It's easier to look at information. That's the feedback I get from everybody. Everybody likes Ascend. I don't know whether they say that because I talk about Ascend and how great it is and how much I love it. I know that they say it to make me happy. I don't know. But it seems to work for our office. So I think the office needs to choose based on what they like. Say, for example, an office is fully paper-based, right? I know there's not too many of them. There are some offices that are fully paper-based because they feel comfortable doing that. They'd have no fear of being hacked ever, right? Because it's all paper-based. You can't expect them to suddenly move to a cloud-based program. There's that huge disconnect. So you may want to move to a survey-based program when you're still automating all of your records and that kind of thing. So it really depends on where you are in your practice cycle, where you want to be, what you're comfortable with, if you're a fully hands-on tech person or you want half and half of that. So you really have to figure out what works best for your practice.
Okay, nice. And then what's a final piece of advice or words of advice that you'd like to give to our listeners?
I have a lot of advice, but I think I need to really crunch it down to one little advice. Dentistry is a beautiful thing. I never realized how complex the industry is until I started working. Until last year in March or April, I thought, the dentist does some work on a patient, you create a claim, you send it off to the insurance company, they pay you, and voila, it's all done. It's not quite simple. It's an extremely complex industry, and I believe between the insurance companies and everything else that's going on in the industry, it's going to just get more complex. So take the help and, the third-party companies out there that's offering you help, like eAssist, like Unitas, people like that who are specialized in those very specific job functions which are time consuming. They just really very time consuming and very busy work. Your candidate does not have the capability to handle all of that. And if you want your business to grow and you want to take it to the next level, use as much help as you can that's out there, and go to a reputable company. I mean, Henry Schein is like at the top of the game, right? I mean, what more reputable company can you look for, right? And when they have all of these different products and services that they offer you, at least explore it and see if it works for you, if it fits into your budget, if it fits into what you're looking for. But I would say taking all of that off of your plate and focusing mainly on the patients will definitely help dentists, no matter where you are in your life cycle of practicing as a dentist. It will definitely help you take you to the next level.
Awesome, Priscilla. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. But before we say goodbye, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
So I'm in Chicago, Illinois. Our website is www.comfortteeth.com. That's COMFORTTEETH.com. Please check us out. Take a look at all the services we offer. We have some really good looking doctors. Check us out. And I'm happy to see you in the asset sometime.
Awesome. So that's going to be in the show notes below. And Priscilla, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure, and we'll hear from you soon.
Thank you, Michael. Great chatting with you.